So when I do a swirl dip bowl, I like to I like to throw on a plaster bat. Just that way the bottom dries. If you do a plastic bat, you're not going to get even drying, and it's critical to have even drying. I've done them on plaster bats and they do work. It's just I've done them on plastic bats and it does work. But I prefer to do them on the plaster bats. But I realize not everybody has plaster bats. Plaster bats are also really good to throw your plates on. You get way less cracking because it can dry evenly. So sometimes when I'm throwing a swirl bowls, it'll just be a day that I'm doing regular bowls, and then the ones that don't turn out quite right turn into swirl bowls. Because you're cutting the rim, it really doesn't matter. Like if your bowl flops, I've even done it when the bowl has completely flopped, and it was one of my nicest swirl bowls. Just let it dry a little bit, picked up the sides, and formed it in place, and yeah, it was beautiful. So you just want to check the bottom of your bowl, and because you're not going to be trimming it, make sure it's not very thick. So I just do that 1/4 of an inch thickness. You don't want your bowl to be too heavy. I will probably do a video showing how I do kind of trim the bottom. So there are ways to get a little bit of the extra weight that's going to be in your sides off. So I just try to go, it's kind of getting out of round, but it really doesn't matter, like I said. So just try to get your sides up as much as you can, and as thin as you can. I try to do them quite big. If I was just doing a regular bowl, I would take more time and make sure that it didn't go wonky, but like I said, it doesn't matter for these bowls, which is kind of the beauty of them. And then I just take my large bowl rib. Okay, I'm gonna stop. I was losing it, but this will turn out beautiful, trust me. So it's a little wonky, but when we cut this side, I will show you how you can make it look like it was never wonky. So I'll keep checking on these, but I'll come back in probably an hour to cut the rim. You don't want to wait too long, otherwise your rim will be too dry. You want it to still be flexible. So the first thing I do is check for things I might not like in the bowl, or where I would want to cut the rim. This one looks pretty good, so I will just go wherever. Take a knife, double-sided knife. This always freaks me out at the beginning, but you're just going to have your wheel going as slow as you can and just gradually get lower. And I try to go about halfway. And then I know I'm not going to need at least that much, so I just cut it right off. So this bowl is really wet, so I'm not even going to score. Like, it's really wet. But if it was firmer, definitely add vinegar and score everything. But this, you can see, is really, really wet. So you're just going to move it around until you get a nice little bowl shape. And then just, I had a bit of a gap here, so I just took it and pushed it down into the clay. Yeah, I think that's good. And then I'm just gonna, I am pushing down and at the same time that I'm pulling a little bit of clay. Let's see what I'm doing. It's so wet though. But if you wait too long, it's hard to cut the rim of the bowl. So you want to get it while it's really, really wet. And I find if you do it when it's really wet, you don't get the cracks like you do in a drier piece. Okay, and now I'm gonna take a sponge and smooth that out on the inside. So I'm still gonna go back when this firms up some more and refine it when it's not quite so wet. I'll show you when we get to that part, but we're going to put it under plastic, so you'll still be able to manipulate the rim a little bit. And then where you cut it, we're going to still clean this up some after. But for right now, I'm just going to, I take and push that up a little bit to cover that. And there's always just a little bit of clay, extra clay in that area. So I tend to take it and I'm going to smush it in this area. Technical term, smush. But yeah, that's how wet the clay is. So I'm just using, I don't even know what these are called. So you want to make sure you have that blended perfectly. When we do the next part after this is dried under plastic for a few days, we will be able to clean this up some more, and I'll use that tool again. Right now we're just gonna wipe everything. Now is when you can manipulate it a little bit if you want to. Like if you wanted this to go out more, you can actually just push it out a little. Say you didn't get your bowl quite as flat as you wanted it. I was pretty happy with this. But if I wanted to change this area, like you can push up the sides. Now is the time to do that. And you can see how thick the clay is, but I will still in the next stage still trim that up. All right, that's it for now. All right, so now these platters have been sitting under plastic on the plaster bats that I threw them on since Monday, and it's now Thursday night. And so I'm gonna take, they're still slightly flexible, so the rim isn't dry, so I can, oops, wrong way. I can take my serrator, is that called a serrator? Shredder, and just put a nice curve on the bowl. Sometimes I'll even go on the inside a little bit. Because you can't trim these, I use this to thin them and kind of get the shape that I want. Right, so then another thing I do before I flip it over to trim it, I'm going to take a sponge and just really work that rim, make it look nice. So then I notice that looks a little, has a little divot in the rim there, so I'm just going to take this and even that out. So I just have this sitting on my foam trimming bat. If you don't have one, any piece of foam will work because we're going to be turning it over onto its rim, so you don't want to put it on a hard surface. All right, another thing I like to do at this stage is just make sure that all your seams are how you want them. It's still quite flexible, so I check where the join, especially in that little crack in there. All right, now we're going to flip it over. Oops, my fingernail went into the rim. All right. And now, because you can't trim it the regular way, but it's still quite heavy, we got to take off all the extra clay with this. I like doing it on the wheel so that I can turn it. Just makes it go faster. But you could do it on a, I forget what they're called. All right, so just keep going around until you have a good shape and take off as much clay as you can so it doesn't weigh 500 pounds. Once you get all the clay off that you want to, you just take a metal rib and smooth it out. So I've also made these bowls using slabs of clay, and so then you don't need to do this process because they're thin enough. But I find these are still faster to make them on the wheel than to do a slab of clay, even with this added step. So I think I made 10 in probably an hour or less. And then each one of these maybe takes me 5 minutes to get ready. And then just take a sponge and do a final smoothing. And our stamp. So then when you flip it over, you might have to just go back in and smooth out the rim again. I know I hit the rim with my fingernail when I was flipping it. There, and that is it. Oh, little black speck. So then they go on, at this stage now, they go on drywall and go back under plastic for another week. So they will dry evenly without cracking. I find the drywall, that has a little thing in it. I find the drywall helps have even drying and under plastics, so it seems like the bottom dries at the same speed as the sides. So that's what works for me. I know somebody's going to ask me, so I thought I would show you. This is what I throw these bowls on. It is plaster. I got them from Plainsman clay, but you can buy molds and make your own plaster bats. But yeah, that's what I throw on, and I use a bat mate to attach it to my wheel. And actually, I never like taking the screws out of my wheel. So I put the bat mate right on another bat and then attach the plaster to this bat with the bat mate on it. If you don't know what a bat mate is, it's basically a chamois that you just wet between each use. And I just put it right onto that bat and then stick the plaster bat on top of that, and it works perfect. There, that's it. Happy platter making, swirl bowl making. If you enjoyed watching this or learned something new or just found it interesting, remember to like and subscribe and leave a comment.